What if I told you there was a way to get a train ticket from London to Glasgow from as low as £30, but the only catch is to travel with Britain's worst train company? The Avanti Superfare allows you to get cheap fares to almost every major destination on their network, and I'll be taking you with me today as we put it to the test on one of the company's longest routes from the British capital London to Scotland's largest city, Glasgow. Now join me as the journey continues. The day starts at Euston Station in central London, the southern terminus of Britain's West Coast main line, which serves most large cities across the UK north of London, and was recently confirmed as the future terminus of the brand new HS2 line, which will open at the start of the next decade. The first intercity terminal in London opening in 1837, it has seen numerous developments over the years, including the addition of new display screens outside where we can see our departure today, the 0730 to Glasgow Central at platform 3, which leaves in 10 minutes, so I better hurry. Thankfully, one of the more positive changes to Euston can be seen from this shot. This video was recorded when the massive departure board was instead used for displaying adverts, but I'm pleased to say that the boards are now showing departures again from December 2024 onwards, which makes the station slightly less of a pain to use than it already is. There are also plenty of shops and eateries on both the lower and upper levels, making this station well equipped for the 36 million passengers who use it annually. Now, I normally go through the prices at the end of the video, but you're probably wondering what the Avanti Superfare is if you're not familiar with it, right? Avanti West Coast, the main intercity operator from London to Birmingham, Manchester and Glasgow amongst other places, launched the Superfare in 2023, where you're able to book fixed fare tickets on their least popular trains across their network. Fares range from £9 between London and Birmingham to £30 from London to Glasgow, which given how expensive railways in the UK are nowadays is pretty much unbeatable. To book, you need to go to the separate website on screen and in the below description, and from there you select the departure and arrival stations along with the intended date of travel. Now what's important to note as well is that you can only book the Superfare between 21 and 7 days in advance, and once the selection is made, you need to choose a time interval which is best suited to your plans, whatever they may be. Once the ticket is booked, you'll then be notified via email 24 hours before departure which train you've been assigned with your ticket included, and luckily for me, the 7:30 departure is the first available direct service to Glasgow you could take when I was travelling, and the one I was aiming for actually, though do note that these Superfares can and do sell out as seen here, so don't leave the booking too late. As you would expect also, all Superfare tickets are standard class only, meaning no access to the first class lounge at Euston for me this morning sadly, though you could always get a seatfrog upgrade if you really wanted to have a cheaper first class experience compared to paying the full fare. On the majority of their routes, including ours today, Avanti West Coast, a joint venture between First Group and Italy's Trenitalia, used their flagship fleet of 56 9 or 11 car Class 390 Pendolino electric multiple units, which were built by Euston in several series from 2001 to 2012. Avanti also used to operate a fleet of 20 Class 221 Super Voyager trains in addition to these, though these have since been withdrawn in favour of the new Evero trains, which I've already reviewed on the channel before. The London to Glasgow route exclusively uses the Pendolinos, which feature active tilting technology to allow 125 mph running on the West Coast main line, though that may not be to everyone's preference. Our service is one of the faster services to Glasgow, which goes direct via Crewe as opposed to via Birmingham, which some slower trains do. So let's get on board as we should be departing soon. The entire fleet of Pendolinos recently completed an extensive refurbishment programme, which I personally prefer to the older interior, but which do you prefer? Standard class on the sets is in a 2x2 configuration, featuring a mixture of airline and table seats. Sadly, given I boarded quite late, here's my seat for the first part of the journey. Today's route out of London will see us cross the entire length of Britain's West Coast main line, though our first stop of Warrington Bank Quay won't be reached until around 2 hours in. From there, we make further calls up to Carlisle just before crossing the Scottish border to eventually reach Glasgow Central, with an expected arrival of 12 PM, taking 4.5 hours to cover the 401 mile distance. It's exactly 7:30 AM and we leave London Euston on time to commence the long journey up north. Leaving Euston sees us navigate the suburbs of northwest London, as well as the commuter traffic which serves it. It isn't much longer until we pass Wembley Intercity Depot, where a large amount at present and past rolling stock can be seen stabled. Keep an eye out as well for the world famous Wembley Stadium, which can just about be made out in this typical gloomy English weather. Shortly afterwards, we pass Watford Junction, which Avanti uses on some of its services on a pick-up and drop-off only basis, and is mainly served by its competitor London North Western Railway, who I will be doing a video on soon. But enough about that. Let's now focus on the features of standard class. The new seats Avanti chose for its Pendolinos are somewhat controversial, but personally I find them okay. The base padding, good ergonomics and winged headrests make them more than acceptable for the routes they do. That being said, the foldable armrests are quite small, however this does make getting in and out of the seat easier without having to raise them, and they are well padded. The seat pitch is nothing special, but the legroom is brilliant thanks to the grooves at the bottom of the seat which allow for greater space. Each airline seat pair has individual power and USB-A sockets at the base of the seat in front, whilst table seats contain a pair of UK 3-pin sockets, 4 USB-A sockets and a wireless charging point on the table, though there were some which were under repair like this on the set I travelled on. Each airline seat also has a fold-down tray table which can be extended like so, ideal for doing some work or, like me, catching up with your favourite YouTube videos. Seating areas also feature electronic reservation displays which use the traffic light system, with green meaning unreserved like my area is here for example. The seat numbers are also displayed in Braille too for those with visual impairments, which is a nice touch. Reading lights can be found just above the displays and below the overhead luggage storage for smaller items such as bags. Larger ones are available throughout the train, with several seats being replaced to enhance this, as seen here. Window sides, you can also find the coat hooks and draw down window blinds, which I just about got away with pulling down and up here as a demonstration. Overall, I still maintain my stance that this is a very good refurbishment, which ticks most of the boxes, and in my opinion the Pendolinos are probably one of the few remaining UK trains where travelling in standard class isn't actually bad for your back. Dawn now emerges on the West Coast main line as we continue to speed north, and we soon pass Bletchley in the Milton Keynes suburbs, which gives us a good view of the brand new East-West rail line, whose first phase is due to open at some point this year. There are also a lot of West Midlands Railway Class 730s stabled, which at this point were covering West Coast mainline suburban services. There is a longer distance variant with the London North Western sub-brand, which will be operating from this year, which I will hopefully be trying at some point soon. Milton Keynes Central itself is again served by some, yet not all Avanti services, being the largest settlement in Buckinghamshire and was one of the last to receive city status by Queen Elizabeth II in August 2022. After Wolverton, the main West Coast main line diverges from the Northampton loop just to the right, completely bypassing the city to head to Rugby via the Long Buckby Wharf, where the mobile data starts to get a little patchy. In previous videos I've done on the Pendolinos, I've often criticised the Wi-Fi, but I'm pleased to say that Avanti have finally fixed this, and after registering it's easy to connect and browse the internet as you wish. We then speed through Rugby, which is where the game itself was invented in 1823 by schoolboy William Webb Ellis, and more importantly for us, where the Birmingham branch of the West Coast Main Line splits from the main Trent Valley Line portion to Stafford and Crewe, which we'll be taking now. This particular section of the route is notable for its large amount of curves and bends, which is where we can experience the Pendolino's tilting function, which allows it to tilt up to 8 degrees to take these corners faster, and to reach 125 miles per hour, the highest speed on the west coast, which is only attainable by tilting trains, so services using the new Everos which don't tilt are restricted to 110 miles per hour for now. Probably one of the largest oddities of this service is that it's one of the few to not call at Crewe, often dubbed as the centre of the railway universe by enthusiasts due to it being one of the major junctions on the West Coast route, with significant ties to Britain's railways. Many of the iconic British trains were manufactured at Crewe Works, which will also include partial manufacture of the new HS2 rolling stock in the future. This is Warrington Bank Quay, our first calling point over 2 hours after leaving London and one of 3 stations to serve the town of Warrington in the northwest of England. The station here primarily serves London traffic, with some services to Chester, Leeds and Manchester as well. Looking around the rest of the train, it's worth noting that along with Eurostar, Avanti is one of the few UK daytime operators to have 3 classes of travel. One carriage on the Pendolinos is Standard Premium, which was introduced in 2021. You can book this separately or just take a seat and pay extra, which is £35 on Avanti's Anglo-Scottish routes. This is basically just a first class seat, but without the lounge access and additional food and drink service. First class makes up the remaining 2 carriages, and like Standard Premium, is in a 2x1 configuration. As I mentioned earlier, securing a seatfrog upgrade alongside the Superfare ticket is a good way to avoid paying what can often be outrageous fares, which 3 weeks in advance start at £121.70, including a third off with a railcard. Wheelchair accessible spaces can be found in several areas of the train, notably coaches B and D for standard class, and are reasonably spacious as you can see. Accompanying these spaces in both first and standard are accessible toilets, though as you would expect, standard toilets are found in all the remaining carriages. Minus the Avanti vinyls, these remain the same from before their refurbishment, and yeah, that also includes the cherry smell. It was clean enough despite it being slightly claustrophobic in here, so that's the main thing, I guess. One thing I should also note is that new display screens were fitted in all carriages, in common with others found on UK trains these days. These feature live journey information as well as the temperature and CCTV footage, which is quite handy. Just after crossing the River Ribble, we arrive into Preston Station, our first stop in the county of Lancashire and probably one of the more impressive stations on the northern section of the West Coast main line. After we leave, we can see a Transpennine Express Nova 2 on standby. Transpennine competes with Avanti on the West Coast Anglo-Scottish routes on the northern end, and if you want to see what it's like to travel with them, click the link above now. Our next stop is the county town of Lancaster, with the station currently undergoing a refurbishment due to be completed later this year. After departure, there are spectacular views over the River Lune, though this is partially obscured by the fencing as you can see. Just north of Oxenholme, which our train skips, is where the Low Gill Viaduct can be seen, one of the scenic highlights of this part of the route. This is part of the now defunct Ingleton branch line linking Yorkshire with Lancashire and Cumbria, dating back to the 19th century, a desire to provide further links with London to Scotland, which was sadly fully closed in the 1960s, with the removal of the tracks in 1967 destroying any hope for the route's revival. After this point, I started to get a bit hungry and decided to head to the Onboard shop located in Coach D. Whilst a lot smaller than the older one pre-refurbishment, this does improve overall seating capacity, and one of the more welcome additions is the new water refill point. This was not operational when I made this journey, but has since been made such in November 2024, and I was able to get fresh water on another trip I made like so. I'll let you guess in the comments where I was coming from. As for the food itself, here's what I bought, and as always, I've linked the menu in the description below to see the full offerings and prices for yourself. Though in the meantime, let's just sit back, relax, and enjoy the stunning scenery which the Cumbrian countryside has to offer. Carlisle is our last stop in England and on the trip as a whole, being located around 8 miles from the Anglo-Scottish border. This Grade 2 listed station, named Carlisle Citadel Station, is named after the Carlisle Citadel, two Grade 1 listed towers commissioned by King Henry VIII during the 16th century as a fortress, but now awaits conversion into a campus for the University of Cumbria.
Service to Glasgow Central.
Speaking of the Scottish border, unlike on the East Coast main line, there's no actual physical way to see that the border has been crossed, so you'll need to rely on Google Maps for this one. We crossed the border around here. We're now in Scotland for the remaining hour of the journey into the country's largest city. We now pass Motherwell, an infrequent stop for Avanti located 15 minutes and 15 miles away from Glasgow, meaning our journey is coming to an end. Avanti may be the worst train operating company in Britain, but £30 from London to Glasgow with the Superfare scheme is pretty hard to beat, provided you're flexible and leave at least a week until booking. Oh, and you catch Avanti on a good day. This is also significantly cheaper than the £70.50 standard class fare a week in advance, so why not give it a go sometime? Anyway, we also experience a rare moment with Avanti West Coast, with a bang-on-time arrival into Glasgow Central at 12 PM. Now you've heard from me, I want to hear from you. Have you used the Avanti Superfare before? Are you considering trying it after watching this video? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and don't forget to like and share it if you did to aid the channel's growth, as well as subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content such as this weekly. Well, this begins a weekend away for me, so I'm off to check into the hotel. Thanks so much for coming with me on this trip, and I look forward to bringing you with me on my next one.